Welcome to my series of videos. This is part one. So I'm making a prep for the commercial check ride, the oral part, and I'm currently working on my commercial. I'm at 273 hours, and I'm taking a small break, but I'll be coming back in January. Hopefully, get my commercial as soon as possible. And I just really want to make this series more for me, so I can listen to my voice and anybody else that wants to listen in, maybe learn something new. And all I really want to do is put everything out there and we can all talk about, have a conversation, see something new that I can learn, something you can learn. I'm gonna be breaking up these videos in multiple parts. I just finished editing the first part. It was really long. It was coming up to about 17 minutes. So I wanted to cut there. That's gonna be the pilot qualifications, then it's gonna be the aircraft stuff, and then after that, cross country, weather, systems, and all that stuff. So we're gonna have fun here. We're gonna learn and get ready for commercial check ride, right?
To study the ground oral, I'm going down the ACS list. That gives you everything you need, what you're gonna know, what you need to know when you get to your check ride. So first things first, pilot qualifications. If you want to become a commercial pilot, what are the regulations? This is part of the 61-129. You need a total time of 250 hours. That's the big number everybody goes for. 100 hours of PIC. Of those 50 hours, of those 100 hours, you need 50 to be an airplane and 50 have to be cross country. If you do your instrument, you're gonna be able to get those cross countries already. 20 hours of training. Of those, 10 hours of instrument. If you did your instrument, then you already have that. 10 hours in TAA or complex. 1 2 hour cross country daytime. That's 100 nautical miles in a straight. Your point of departure to your point of arrival. Does it have to be VFR? That is actually very debatable. Some people say it doesn't really matter. It just matters that it's daytime. That's what the reg says. There's nothing about VFR technically. And then another 2 hour cross country, that's nighttime. 100 nautical miles from your point of departure to your point of arrival. 300 nautical mile cross country solo, remember that. And you are going to do 3 landings. 2 of those can be touch and goes, of course. Funny, it doesn't have to be VFR, particularly I did mine's IFR. But one of the airports had to be at least 250 nautical miles from your departure point in a straight line. And then 5 hours night VFR. Here's a good point or a good tip would be after you finish your private that you're building up time, you should try to do a lot of your cross countries at night because you're going to be killing, especially if you're doing it by yourself. You're doing PIC, solo, night, and cross country time. That's 4 birds, 1 stone. And here's an important part about that night VFR time. So I actually have a friend of mine that actually went to a check ride and he got denied to start the check ride. And it's because of 10 takeoff and landings in a traffic pattern. So let me explain what I'm talking about. I'm gonna come into an airport with a tower at night, and first landing, 1, go around, 2, whatever, so on until 10. If you're coming in, technically, that first landing is not part of the traffic pattern because you didn't do the 4 segments. When you do 1 lap around, that counts as the takeoff and landing. And so technically, don't just do 10. If you're gonna do all of them in one night, do at least 11 or 12 because one of them isn't gonna count. Some DPEs might be, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. Some others might be more particular, so make sure you're getting a little bit above your time. Does it suck that you're paying more? Yes, by the end of the day, it all goes to your 1500 if you're going all the way to ATP. So remember, we're still in pilot qualifications, but we're gonna go into privileges and limitations. So PAVE, P, pilot. So what can you do now as a commercial pilot? You can 1, carry passengers and property for hire. 61-133. So what are your limitations? If you don't have an instrument rating, this is an important one, you cannot go more than 50 nautical miles on a flight if you have passengers for hire. That doesn't count for property. If you're transporting goods, that doesn't count. It only counts for people. Here's another thing. You're limited to night flights. You cannot do night flights if you do not have an instrument with your commercial.
That only applies to when you're carrying passengers at night.
Now, how do you stay current as the pilot? So, one, PIC, day and night. So remember, for your daytime, you have to do 3 takeoff and landings, touch and goes, and VFR day. And then nighttime PIC, it's 3 takeoff and landings, full stop. You can do a full stop and go, or you can do a full stop and taxi back. And don't forget, during your check ride, they're gonna ask you questions that's gonna make you think about currency and proficiency, right? Because you can be current, legal, right? But are you proficient? Let's say during your check ride, your DP asks you, today you did 4 takeoff and landings. Your day current now. 89 days later, your mom wants to be taken up 50 miles up somewhere, right? That's across country. Now, the DP is going to say or ask you, are you going to do it? You're going to sit there and think, well, technically I'm legal, you're current, but you have to think about proficiency, right? You haven't flown for 89 days. Do you want to take that flight? I don't think so. Maybe you should go fly by yourself a little bit before you take someone, right? Technically you're legal, but on a check ride, that's where you're going to want to say. Make sure that you sound confident. You know what you're doing. And the most important, as a commercial pilot, you're not private anymore. You're going for a commercial. It's about safety. Safety. It's about knowing about the legality and about the proficiency. There's more ways about being current other than day and night. I'm going to assume that you already have an instrument. So I'm going to go over things so you can remember this, because they can ask you on your check ride. So let's say you want to do instrument flight today. You have to look back 6 months, 6 calendar months, and that's going to tell you if you can be PIC of that aircraft. So you have to do first, what are the 3 things you have to do to be PIC of an instrument flight? 6 approaches or 6 hits. Whichever you want to say is up to you. Hits or approaches are fine. Holds, you have to do holds at some point. And then you have to intercept and track courses using navigational or electronical systems. So for your instrument currency, to keep that currency, you have 12 months. So in this first 6 months, you're fine. You can be a PIC of an instrument flight because you're current. But for the second 6 months, let's say after those 6 months, you forgot to do any approaches, any IFR flying, you're gonna be you're gonna be confused. You're gonna forget everything. So the best thing to do, and the cheapest, would be safety pilot. Maybe a friend, or it can be an instructor, someone that's.
I want to make a correction. I explained this, but I think I can do it a lot better now. So for your safety pilot, that person needs to be minimally private pilot. That's for VFR conditions, but you can fly an IFR if that safety pilot is IFR current and rated. So if you want to fly in IFR conditions and you're not IFR current, your safety pilot has to be IFR current. And that person is the one that has to pick up the IFR clearance for you to fly current. So that's just something to think about. And you can always fly in IFR conditions if you have that person with you, if you're not current at the moment. And don't forget, in your logbook, you're gonna have to include the safety pilot's name and safety pilot's certificate number, because you're not current and that person is the one that is doing the eyes for you, because you're gonna have your viewing limited device on.
Another way to keep your currency is simulators, but you have to have a copy of the sim certificate in your logbook somewhere to show that this sim that you're flying on, it's FAA certified and it's not a flight simulator by Microsoft. So after you finish those 6 months, and let's say you didn't fly anymore, IFR, right? And it's already been a year. Now the only way to bring back your currency is to fly with CFI, or technically CFII, or a DPE.
So correction, the CFII or the DPE are going to sign you off from an IPC. That's what you're gonna have to do now. And that consists of 1 hour of ground and 1 hour of flying minimum, And after you complete that, they'll give you a log endorsement. And then your 6-month timer starts from the beginning again.
Other ways to be current. So pilot flight review. This is 24 months, consists of 1 hour of ground minimum and 1 hour of flight with a CFI. You technically don't have to do a flight review if two things. One, you've had a new certificate or rating given to you, then that timer starts all over again. Or two, which is interesting, if we do so the wings program. I've never looked into it, but I've heard a little bit about it, and I've seen videos. And the wings program are basically tasks you do while you're flying and whatnot. And if you complete that and you submit that, your flight review gets pushed off to that timer starts all over again.
Interesting fact, the CFI and II, when you get that rating, it used to not count towards the flight review restart time, but more recently it has changed, and if you get one of those two ratings, your time renews.
Now, commercial side, proficiency checks. This is important. These are for type ratings. Let's say you're gonna fly on a Citation 10, and if you want to fly that every year, you need a proficiency check, and that's basically a flight review. But for that specific aircraft, with a specialized pilot that can give that. So here's an interesting fact: PIC and SIC, pilot in command and second in command, both have different flight reviews. If you're a second in command, you technically can't be a PIC and vice versa. Each one are trained differently. Now that we finished with the proficiency of the aircraft and your flight logs and all that, let's look at the currency on your medical, because that all counts under the PAVE pilot. So you need your medical to be current. To be a commercial pilot, what type of medical do you need? Well, second is the minimal to be a commercial pilot, to use your privileges, or first class. If you don't have a second, then your commercial certificate, technically you can't use your commercial privileges. You only get to use your private privileges. Kind of get downgraded according to your medical.
By the way, I'm referring to downgrade only for a third class medical.
But then when you upgrade again, your privileges come back. So you have 3 medicals: first, second, third. Third is usually for the private pilot. Second is for commercial uses, and first is for airliner or commercial uses too. So you remember, each one is divided up between if you're older than 40 or under 40. So first, if you're over 40, it's gonna be 6 calendar months. Remember the calendar, that's really important. You can't just say 6 months. Below 40, it's a 12 calendar months. Don't say a year. I've warned you. Second, it's gonna be 12 calendar months, no matter if you're above or below 40 years old. And then third, big difference, it's gonna be 60 calendar months, which is 5 years. But don't say 5 years. 60 calendar months, and it's gonna be 24 calendar months if you're over 40 years old. But here's the thing that confused me a lot. It's if you're, let's say if you get a first class medical, how long will it last? So I was confused, or I was told wrongfully, that you're gonna go from first class 1 year, then the second class for another year, and then 5 years for the next. So that's 5, 6, 7. That's 7 years in total. Technically, that's wrong. So you got to think about it of your age, right? And this is how I kind of understood it. So you have to look at the third. If you're above 40, your medical certificate can only be as long as 2 years in total. So let me explain it. Let's say you're over 40, you just turned 41, you went to get your medical, first class medical. So the first class is going to be 6 months. Then it's going to go down. After the 6 months, it's going to be another 6 months. And then your third is going to be 1 year. If you're younger than 40, it's going to be first class. You go in, you say it's 23, you go get your first medical. You're going to go 1 year. It's going to go down. There's going to be another 1 year. And it's going to go down. And it's going to be 3 years. If you see, 3, 4, 5, they add up just like that. Now that we talked about the first, second, and third, now we're going to talk about basic med. They will ask you this. You need to know this. Basic med has changed over the years. What is basic med, and what are the limitations, and how you get it? You got to think of it like this, right? It's an alternate way of flying without having a valid FAA medical certificate. But first, you've had to had a valid certificate, medical certificate, before being able to apply for this. So how do you get basic med? So first, you need a valid license, state license. You need to get a physical exam from a state licensed physician. You have to have that valid medical in the past, and then you have to do a complete basic med educational course online. I've researched before. I've never really seen it, but if you're interested, you could just Google it online, and it'll come up. So what are your limitations? So you can't fly with more than six in total, including yourself. So 5 and 1. The max takeoff weight is 6,000 pounds payload. You cannot fly above 18,000 feet. In other words, you can't do instrument flying at class alpha. And you can't be compensated for hire. Wrong and right. So technically, you can't use your commercial privileges to be hired to take people from point A to B your property, but you can be hired as a CFI on the basic med. My first private instructor was actually basic med, and that's how I really remember it. So if someone asks you, well, you have basic med, that means you can't get paid. Again, you can't just for CFI. And can a basic med pilot fly in the IFR? Yes, they can fly in the IFR and be current. My CFI that had basic med actually was going for his CFII. Your privileges are limited, but they're expanding ever so much throughout the years.
So we finally got to the end of part 1 for this series. Hope you enjoyed. Anything you think that is wrong or I can learn better, just let me know. Put it in the comments below, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to be posting part 2 as soon as possible.